Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and it's Saturday evening. Time for the injury report, all of the player news, and weather updates across the NFL. Based on this news, we'll update the rankings, give you the final version for the second round of the playoffs. Let's get going. We're going to begin in Arizona, where Emari Demercado is on IR since last week. But also Trey Benson, he's out. That's what we expected. So James Conner is a lock in your lineup, a very safe play this week. The weather's 42 degrees, and if there's one player I'm not worried about from the Cardinals, it would be James Conner. But maybe Kyler does fold in the cold. He has played poorly in the rain earlier this season. But on the other side of the ball, in Carolina in this game, Xavier Legette is out. But Jalen Coker is questionable with a quad injury that cropped up later in the week. He was full Wednesday, limited Thursday and Friday. I expect him to play. I think they're just being cautious, but still not ideal, especially because David Moore is questionable with a concussion, and he was full on Friday in practice. So I do expect David Moore to suit up, and that means maybe Adam Thielen and Coker aren't totally as safe. There's kind of a weird target share in Carolina. I still think I favor Coker and Thielen. However, David Moore could be an annoying player in this mix. But Jonathan Brooks and Miles Sanders are on IR, so Chuba Hubbard gets the bulk of the carries. They brought up Mike Boone from the practice squad. In Atlanta, Younghoe Koo, the kicker, was placed on IR. The player elevated is Riley Patterson. Maybe you'll be starting Patterson instead of Koo, but Michael Penix is the starter, and that's going to be very interesting. Maybe that saves some fantasy value for players like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, but mostly I think it's just more touches for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier against the Giants. For the Giants in this same game, Tyrone Tracy is questionable with a ankle injury, and he was limited all week in practice. So he is expected to play. I do think he'll be on the field, but not 100%. He has been losing touches to Devin Singletary the last couple games. So I think Singletary is a bit safer given the injury status of Tyrone Tracy, but Drew Lock will be the starter, Tommy DeVito the backup. We don't have to worry about Tim Boyle anymore. So Malik Neighbors was full in practice on Thursday. I think he's a very safe start. It's a decent matchup against the Giants, and one reason to favor this game in your decision making is the fact that it's indoors in a dome. There is no weather to worry about. It is a relevant week for weather in other games. So that's a bonus for this matchup. But in Buffalo, like I mentioned, weather is a legit concern for this matchup. It's going to be 15 degrees. The snow is supposed to be done by noon or so, and the game is at 4 p.m. So I don't think it's going to be actively snowing, but still it's going to be extremely cold. The coldest game on the week is this Bills-Patriots game, but both teams are from that part of the country. It's not a massive acclamation for them, but still, it's not fun to play in. Maybe the Bills, though, make it a fun game like they did against the Niners. Curtis Samuel is their only player on the injury report for Buffalo. He has a rib injury, limited all week in practice, expect him to play, but he's the fourth string receiver. He's kind of irrelevant. I would be trusting Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman above Curtis Samuel. But otherwise, for the Patriots, the only player on the injury report on offense would be JaMycal Hasty, and he is out. So that's maybe like one or two extra touches for Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson. JaMycal Hasty, not a relevant option in fantasy. In Chicago, they're getting Roschon Johnson back, who's missed 2 games with a concussion, and that means DeAndre Swift is more likely to get vultured on the goal line. So Roschon is actually kind of tempting if all you're chasing is a touchdown and you need to start a backup. If you're desperate outside the top 30, Roschon may be a good pickup off the wire. But Travis Homer, the other backup, is doubtful. So behind DeAndre Swift, it's just Roschon. Swift, though, is active. He has been limited in practice the last couple games. But the weather is also relevant here. It's not going to be snowing. There's only a 10% chance that will happen. But it's 32 degrees in Chicago. So maybe Jared Goff or Caleb Williams. We haven't really seen them in this type of weather yet. Goff is probably going to be fine, but who knows? It could be a problem. And Caleb, we haven't really seen him tested by a rough Chicago winter yet. So this will be interesting. Maybe a tighter matchup than most people think. But Jahmyr Gibbs gets a massive upgrade. Because of Dave Montgomery's knee injury, he is out for this game. But that's what we knew. However, I did not rank Craig Reynolds or Shione Vaki, and I kind of feel like one of them might score a touchdown. I do think Craig Reynolds is actually worth ranking, but maybe not actually starting. That's maybe more of a DFS type of option. But with Khalif Raymond on IR, we know that Jared Goff has to step up. And historically, St. Brown only has 1 touchdown in 7 career games versus the Bears. So maybe Tim Patrick or Jamison Williams will get more targets. I do trust Laporta in this game, but still I don't think you're benching Amon-Ra St. Brown. In the Bengals offense, Tanner Hudson is out, one of their second string tight ends, and he has been relevant with Eric All Jr. also on IR. That means Mike Gesicki and Drew Sample are the main tight ends they have. So maybe a few more snaps and targets for Gesicki, but Evan McPherson and Zach Moss are also on IR. The Bengals offense is all good to go. Otherwise, the temperature in Cincinnati is 34 degrees. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But for Cleveland, they're going to be without Cedric Tillman for the 3rd straight game. He has not played since week 12, and that's kind of shocking given it's a concussion. So maybe you feel better about Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore, but I really don't trust any pass catcher with like supreme confidence anymore now that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the quarterback. Without Jameis Winston, the upside is not as high in Cleveland. So I don't think I really want to start anyone other than Jeudy, but it is worth mentioning David Njoku might play. He's questionable with that hamstring injury. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, but he was limited on Friday, and now he's a game time decision. According to the coach, Njoku is fighting to play, but obviously it's going to come down to his walkthrough before the game, how he's feeling, if he's ready. So I think he'll play. I did rank him, but obviously it's kind of hard to say. Akins is now not a player to even consider. Njoku, though, was getting so much volume, I'd probably start him at tight end. I do think he's a top 10 tight end if active. So monitor his status. But as we mentioned before, Jameis Winston is not the starter. He's questionable with a shoulder injury, limited all week in practice, but he really got benched because he played so poorly last week. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to get the start. And without Nick Chubb, who's been placed on IR, I do see a ton of volume going to Jerome Ford. It's a good matchup for him. He's probably going to get 75 to 80% of the snaps. And Deontay Foreman, Pierre Strong don't concern me at all. So Jerome Ford and Jerry Jeudy, maybe the only 2 viable options. Unless Njoku plays, I'd probably be starting Njoku if active. In Dallas, Jalen Brooks is out, and he accounts for like 1 target per game, but last week it was a touchdown. So maybe that opens the door for somebody else. Maybe Jake Ferguson finally gets in the end zone. Hasn't done that this season. If not, it probably goes to Brandon Cooks. In Tampa Bay, their opponent, Bucky Irving, is active. He was full in practice on Friday. He will suit up. No concerns with Bucky Irving. He's too talented to bench. A must start, in my opinion. But Cade Otton, their tight end, has been ruled out, and he wasn't really that involved in general, and the backup behind him is Payne Durham, who gets all the snaps. So if anything, that just moves the needle for Jalen McMillan even higher. I trust McMillan even more, and I think his odds at scoring do increase. I expect like 3 more targets going for McMillan with no Cade Otton. So you're already starting Mike Evans. The running backs are must starts. Baker Mayfield should have a very good game. Maybe McMillan is one of the best flex plays you can find. The Packers game is going to be very snowy, 32 degrees, a 20% chance I do expect it to be snowing. So that's a big downgrade to the entire passing offense on both sides. I have a hard time trusting Jordan Love given it's against the Saints, and Jacobs has 2 games the last month with 3 touchdowns. I think they're going to lean on Jacobs heavily in this matchup. But Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie running back, still remains out. But interestingly, Luke Musgrave may be activated off of IR. The game is Monday, and we're not going to know for sure until 4 p.m. Monday afternoon. So he's been limited in practice, not just this week, but last week. He didn't play in week 15, but if he is active on Monday, I don't think you can start Tucker Kraft with any confidence. I would not expect the entire snap share to go to Kraft. So that's just too many red flags, in my opinion. I did lower Tucker Kraft, especially if Musgrave plays, but even just because of the weather, I don't feel good about starting him. Very touchdown dependent, and now those odds are cut in half with Luke Musgrave possibly on the field. So that is a bummer if you're trusting Kraft. But in New Orleans, on the flip side, if you were trusting Alvin Kamara, I hope you have Kendre Miller. Kamara is out, looks like, for the season, and I don't expect Jamal Williams to really move the needle at all. So Kendre Miller, their young player they drafted last season, finally gets a chance to prove what he can do. I thought he was really talented coming out of college, but he's never been healthy. Hopefully he can stay healthy these last 3 weeks of the season. So Kendre Miller, a very interesting flex play, probably the best option off the wire this week. So that is my favorite pickup if he's still available. At least get him on the bench. Keep him away from your opponent. I would hate to lose to someone that slots in Kendre last second in the flex. But Derek Carr is out yet again, so Spencer Rattler will start this game, and MVS, their top receiving target, may not get the revenge matchup on Monday. He's questionable with both a chest injury and an illness. He did not practice all week at all, and I really have no idea if he'll be active. I don't expect it to happen, but it is a game time decision, 50-50 bet. It is a revenge game I'm sure he would like to play, but I think if he is active, he's a must bench. I wouldn't be planning to start MVS because it's Monday, and who else are you going to pivot to other than one of those random Packers receivers? I would avoid all receivers in this game. So bench MVS, don't trust him at all. We know that Olave, Shaheed, Taysom Hill, and Bub Means are on IR. But if anything, the only players I think will be viable in the passing game would be Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson, given the bar is so low at tight end. I don't think I'm starting them, however, in the snow. In Indianapolis, a game with no weather to worry about. It's indoors, and I maybe give the tiebreaker to a matchup like this. But Alec Pierce is out. The deep ball option down the field won't be available, and maybe one of those targets does go to Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, or perhaps A.D. Mitchell can redeem himself after the fumble last week. But Ashton Dulin might step back on the field. He's questionable, was full in practice on Friday. I do expect him to play, and if it goes to him, that would really be terrible for your fantasy lineup. So don't think I'm really trusting the Colts receivers, but maybe a slight bump in the rankings for Pittman and Downs. And their kicker, Matt Gay, is questionable, but is expected to play. It doesn't look like they added a backup behind him on the roster. But last week, Mo Ali Cox didn't play. Kylan Granson had a decent game, but Ali Cox was full in practice on Friday. I expect him to play. I'm not starting a Colts tight end at this point in the season. In Tennessee, Will Levis is questionable with a shoulder injury, but he was already benched for Mason Rudolph. So at best, he's the backup. No concerns there. If anything, that's an improvement for guys like Ridley. But in the backfield, we're not quite sure what's going to happen with Tony Pollard. He's questionable with an ankle injury, did not practice all week long, but he has been missing practice consistently and playing the last few weeks. He's a game time call, and I think it's truly 50-50. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Pollard is available on Sunday. So I do think if he's active, Tyjae Spears is still probably the better option. We saw 2 touchdowns for Tyjae last week. I expect more snaps and design plays for him. He was there in practice all week long. So Tyjae gets the upgrade. I think he would be the start in Tennessee this week, even if Pollard is healthy. But obviously if Pollard is out, Tyjae becomes way more valuable, and you'd probably expect a touchdown and close to 20 touches. So he's a very interesting bet. If you have questions on Tyjae, let me know in the comment section. Depending on your roster and the situation, I would have contingency plans on Tyjae Spears. But he did move up the rankings, and Chig Okonkwo maybe benefits a lot from Mason Rudolph on the field. Okonkwo wasn't doing shit with Levis. Last week, though, he had double-digit targets, and maybe he's an interesting pickup to replace a guy like Tucker Kraft, who I don't trust anymore. So Okonkwo maybe is worth a pickup, but their kicker, Nick Folk, is a game time decision. He has an abdomen injury, and if he's been your guy, you need someone else. The backup is Braden Nevison, but I'd rather just pick up somebody that's already established with a team already. In Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence and Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis have been on IR for at least a week now, and Mac Jones, Brenton Strange, Brian Thomas Jr. do get the upgrades in general. I would probably be starting Brian Thomas Jr. on every single team I had him. I think he's a true must-start, potential league winner. Brenton Strange, more of a streaming tight end, but is top 15, had a very good game last week against the Raiders. Might be a high-scoring game. I think this is a sneaky shootout in Vegas, at least a decent showing for the Jags offense, in my opinion. In Vegas, though, the home team in this one, Aiden O'Connell will get the start. So I did rank Desmond Ridder yesterday. I missed this in the news, but I don't think it really moves the needle. Anything that you gain in accuracy kind of gets taken away with no rushing value. So Aiden O'Connell, I did rank, but I slotted him in at quarterback 31, where I previously ranked Ridder. I'm not starting Aiden O'Connell in the fantasy playoffs. But Sincere McCormick was officially placed on IR, so is Zamir White. Madison and Abdullah are going to split this backfield. Last week, Abdullah led the team in snaps, and I would expect more fantasy value going to Amir Abdullah, especially in the passing game. He is their third down option, and I expect him to trail against the Jaguars. So Abdullah has some sneaky PPR value. If I'm starting one of the Raiders running backs, it would be Abdullah over Madison. But then DJ Turner was placed on IR. We thought maybe Trey Tucker would get more targets, but if anything, that's been more value for Michael Mayer. Not enough to start though, but he did vulture the production from Bowers a couple weeks ago. I hope that doesn't happen again. In the Rams game, all of the LA Rams players are healthy on offense, and that's very good news. Hopefully they don't burn you like they did last week, but the temperature is the only concern. There's no rain or snow at MetLife, but it is 23 degrees, and that is the second coldest matchup of the week. So the Rams are not totally accustomed to it, and hopefully it doesn't shut them down, but it is a good matchup for both quarterbacks in the secondary. I think they'll be fine on offense. For the Jets, Braylon Allen is questionable with a back injury, but I think he'll play. He was limited Wednesday, Thursday, and full on Friday. That was the same practice designation for Isaiah Davis, but Davis is active. He was taken off the injury report. Braylon Allen still technically a game time decision, but I expect him to play. I'm not starting either of those backups though, with Breece Hall healthy, and otherwise all the other Jets are healthy on offense. So if you're planning to start anyone in that game, I would definitely keep them in the lineup. In Miami, very good temperature, 73 degrees. That'll be warm, and the offenses won't be limited. At least the excuse isn't there due to the cold. But Jalen Waddle is doubtful, not expecting him to play with a knee injury. He did not practice at all this week. So Tyreek Hill perhaps gets an extra target or two, but he's actually questionable himself with a wrist injury / a personal issue. So he did not practice Wednesday. He was full on Thursday, and then on Friday he was limited. He's a veteran. I'm not worried about it. I do expect Tyreek Hill to be active against the Niners. If there's a player that I think benefits the most from no Waddle on the field, it would be Malik Washington, a player drafted in the 7th round but had a great season last year in college. He had over 100 catches out of Vanderbilt, and I thought he was a steal in the 7th round. I wanted the Chargers to draft him instead of Brendan Rice. So I would actually upgrade Malik Washington as a viable low-end flex candidate. If you are desperate in a deep format, I think Malik Washington has some upside, tremendous value this week against the Niners with no Jalen Waddle. But Tua maybe loses some value. I still would start him top 12. And then Jonnu Smith, definitely a safe play. I'm not worried about the difficult matchup on paper against the Niners defense. But the running backs I would trust more, definitely Devon Achane. Gonna get plenty of touches in this one. The Niners on the opposite side of the ball are just depleted in the backfield. Isaac Guerendo is out. So a must start earlier in the week, not available anymore. And I think Patrick Taylor will be the guy, but personally, I was actually a big fan of Izzy Abanikanda coming out of college last year, and he was drafted to the Jets. He was always irrelevant behind Breece Hall. I could see some sneaky potential with Abanikanda. So that's why I think Taylor's actually hard to trust, but he has been on the team longer than Abanikanda, and I expect more snaps for Patrick Taylor. But if Abanikanda does play better and in the second half gets the majority of touches, don't be surprised. I do think he's a talented player that has never really gotten any opportunity in the NFL. But Kyle Juszczyk maybe makes an appearance. I would be hard-pressed to start a Niners running back, but I think if there's one I would take a shot on, it'd be Patrick Taylor. But I'd much rather see what happens in this game and then just start the better player next week than guarantee you this week that Taylor will be a good start. But if anything, I think it helps Brock Purdy. I think he'll be throwing it more to Juwan Jennings as well as George Kittle. Maybe they've lost all faith in Debo, but Purdy should be better at least have more volume in the pass game. But Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason, all of them are on IR. We've known that for a few weeks. But in Minnesota, all of their offensive players are healthy. There's a 65% chance of rain, though, and maybe this test for Sam Darnold won't be passed. Maybe he does get shut down by the weather. I really doubt it. I think he's going to be fine. The weapons they have are too good to really have concerns. I'm still starting Darnold despite the rain forecast in Seattle. But for the Seahawks, the home team is fully healthy on offense. Kenneth Walker is active. He's missed the last couple games. So Zach Charbonnet, big downgrade. You cannot start Charbonnet if Walker's healthy. And then Geno Smith, also active. I was a bit worried he wouldn't suit up, but with his knee injury, he is going to play. And he's fighting for his next contract. His job security is on the line. If they miss the playoffs, maybe he gets replaced by Sam Darnold in free agency next year. But the wide receivers are a bit safer with Geno. I wouldn't feel as confident if it was Sam Howell under center. So Geno will get the start, but probably not worth betting on in fantasy this week, given the injury. The Eagles and Commanders game is roughly like 32 degrees as well. So maybe the cold will be a problem, but I really doubt it. Not too concerning. For Philly, their tight end Dallas Goedert remains on IR. So Grant Calcaterra has that random shot at a touchdown, but I wouldn't be starting him most likely. Britton Covey, their only other player on the injury report, he is out. Doesn't move the needle in any direction. But for Washington, we knew this already. Austin Eckler is on IR. Maybe he comes back in week 18, but next week he won't be available either. So for at least the fantasy playoffs, week 16, 17, Brian Robinson Jr., a must start. Jeremy McNichols also gets an upgrade, but probably not worth starting in your fantasy playoffs. Noah Brown was placed on IR last week, and we saw Olamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown get the most boost in value without him, but not enough to go over 6 points. I wouldn't be starting anyone other than Terry McLaurin. And maybe you can't start Zack Ertz at tight end either. He's questionable with a concussion/shoulder injury, and he did not practice at all on Wednesday, and he was limited both Thursday and Friday while wearing a non-contact jersey. So Ertz is a true game time decision. If he's not cleared Sunday morning, he will not play, and I would have a backup plan. If he's available, I'm definitely starting Zack Ertz in a revenge game. I expect a touchdown for him. But if he's not available, then Ben Sennett will have to step up, a talented rookie that I did have some intrigue in back in the offseason, but has a terrible track record this year. He's gotten barely any targets at all. So maybe he actually gets like 5 or 6 this week. Other than Terry, they have no other weapons to count on. So I would actually be a bit concerned about Jaden Daniels in the passing game, but still probably starting him just because of the run value. Terry, though, expect more volume, especially in the red zone if Ertz is out. So Ben Sennett, maybe worth a pickup, but probably not going to bet on it. They still have John Bates, and that would really suck to start Sennett and watch Bates score a touchdown. So not going to bet on anyone. If Ertz is inactive, you can't start a Commanders tight end, in my opinion. Lastly, those other 3 games have already taken place. The Chargers-Denver game was on Thursday, and then the Chiefs, Texans, Steelers, and Ravens have already played on Saturday. But before I get into the rankings updates, I do want to mention some defensive player updates, and we won't mention everyone by name, but let's go team by team. In Arizona, they have 5 defensive players added to the injury report, either questionable or on IR, and they are banged up in Arizona. Maybe Bryce Young isn't terrible in this matchup. For the Falcons, they're going to be missing 2 linebackers. For the Bills, all 6 injured players last week have been upgraded to at worst questionable and may be available in this game. The Bills defense is getting healthier, but perhaps they still save some guys for the playoffs. I think they can beat the Patriots without them. In Chicago, the Bears center was placed on IR, and another center is questionable. So they're pretty banged up on the O-line. Maybe the running backs don't play well, but I wouldn't worry about it too much in Chicago. In Cincinnati, defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins is out, just like last week. And in Cleveland, defensive tackle Shelby Harris is also out. In Dallas, they have 3 linebackers that are questionable, but expect all of them to play. In Detroit, 11 defensive players are on IR. 2 safeties are questionable, and that includes Brian Branch. So the Lions defense just gets even more injured by the week. But in Green Bay, they are getting a bit healthier. Expect Jair Alexander to suit up After missing last week, he's questionable against the Saints. But cornerback Javon Bullard in the nickel is out, and linebacker Quay Walker is also out. In Indianapolis, the Colts linebacker EJ Speed is out as well. And in Vegas, Max Crosby last week was placed on IR. Nate Hobbs, the cornerback, is also questionable. The Rams offense is fine, but in their defense, linebacker Nick Hampton was placed on IR. In Miami, linebacker Bradley Chubb, who is yet to play this season, will still not get on the field. He is not going to play this week against the Niners. In Minnesota, cornerback Fabian Moreau was placed on IR. Defensive tackle Jalen Redmond has been ruled out. And safety Harrison Smith, dealing with a foot injury, is questionable, but I think he'll probably suit up. And positive news here, cornerback Stephon Gilmore, who has missed a couple games, is active for this one. He is now healthy. And if he does not line up in the slot against JSN, then he probably shuts down DK Metcalf. I'd be worried about Metcalf on Gilmore. In New England, 3 starters are questionable, and most of them are in the secondary. They also have a cornerback that is ruled out in the Patriots defense. For the Giants, linebacker Brian Burns and cornerback Deonte Banks added to the injury report. They're both questionable, and there's already a ton of injuries they already have. Without Burns and Banks, I would definitely trust the Falcons offense even more. In the Jets defense, defensive tackle Quinnen Williams is questionable. He may not play this week. But cornerback DJ Reed opposite Sauce Gardner is active, and that is beneficial, definitely helpful against Cooper Kupp. Their nickelback, though, Michael Carter, is out, and perhaps the slot receiver this week does torch the Jets defense. In San Francisco, defensive end Nick Bosa and linebacker Dre Greenlaw are both questionable. I expect both of them to play. In Tampa, the Bucs starting safety is questionable, along with Antoine Winfield. Their free safety is out, but linebacker KJ Britt doubtful. The Bucs defense a bit banged up. In Tennessee, last team to mention, 8 of their players on defense are either out or on IR, and then there's also 2 linebackers questionable as well. The Titans defense has been depleted with injuries this season. All right, so that's it for all the injury report news, both on offense and defense, along with the weather report. Everything I wanted to mention is out of the way. Before I get into the rankings updates, I am going to give you my picks against the spread. I'm not changing any teams, but I am updating 2 of the lines because it did get easier for you boy. The Bears game now is open to push. I had it at 6.5, and I will take the Chicago Bears +7. I think they can win. I think at worst they cover, but if they do lose on a last drive touchdown, then I will get this to push. If it goes into overtime, this will work out tremendously. So Chicago +7 is the play in my view, and Carolina I think has a chance to upset the Cardinals straight up. I had them at +4 on Monday. Now it's up to +5.5. I disagree with the public. I will take Carolina +5.5. Make it easier on both of them, but I'm still sticking with Minnesota -4 along with Tampa Bay -4. We took Denver +3 that did not work out, but the Chiefs back on Monday, they covered even when they were favored +2.5. That was easy money. So that's it against the spread. I'm not changing anything straight up. I'm sticking with the same picks across every game this week. So now let's get into my updated and final rankings this week. At running back, there are no changes in the top 13. I think the must-start players are all in the top 11, and starting with Rachaad White, Aaron Jones, at the beginning of the next tier, I think they all have to be in your lineup. However, with some injuries to Alvin Kamara and Isaac Guerendo, who I previously ranked in the top 17, there are most players moving up 2 spots behind them. Breece Hall was already above Guerendo. That's why he only moves up 1. Everybody else up 2. So no changes, in my opinion, on any of these players. The projection doesn't change, but with 2 players taken out, they also move up 2 spots. Until we hit Kendre Miller at 22, I think he's the first player in the flex tier. I can't say for sure how well he's going to play in the snow against the Packers, but I do expect a ton of volume for him. I don't worry about Jamal Williams very much, and if there is a touchdown available, it's most likely going to go to Miller. So I think the weather really helps him, but maybe their offense is just that terrible it doesn't move the needle at all. Kendre Miller still has some risk, but based on volume at running back 22, if I have to replace Kamara or Guerendo, my favorite option off of waivers would be Kendre Miller. At running back 22, he's a safe flex play, a high-end option, probably going to give you like 9.5, 10 points in my estimation. But Najee Harris also moves up as he does skip over Isaac Guerendo. And then Travis Etienne, I think, is actually safer than I gave him credit for earlier in the week. I bumped him up 5 spots. I think he did reclaim his job. The snap share is favoring him, and I think against the Raiders, they probably do have the lead at one point. I expect some volume going to ETN to pad the numbers. So I think he's a safer play. Still, Bigsby concerns me, so he's only at number 24, just a flex play, but he is talented. I expect close to 10 points as well from Travis Etienne. I think he's a safer play than Patrick Taylor, who I have at running back 25, and with no Guerendo, I think he's the best play, but I can't say for sure. I mentioned earlier in the video, if it's Izzy Abanikanda, don't be surprised. I actually like Abanikanda's tape out of Pittsburgh, but he was drafted pretty low in the NFL a couple years ago. Then the Jets cut him. They drafted Braylon Allen. They prefer Isaiah Davis over Abanikanda. So I can't say with total confidence that that's actually what's going to happen. I would still be betting on Taylor above Abanikanda right now. At number 25, it's kind of risky, but that Niners backfield's so valuable. There's such a high ceiling. Yeah, why not take a shot? At this point, I think you're kind of desperate, and I do think Patrick Taylor off the wire is better than anyone else outside the top 25. But at 26, maybe I'm too low on Tyjae Spears. If you told me that Pollard does not play at all, then I think Tyjae would actually go up above Kendre Miller. I think he'd be moving up to 22. I don't think I'd put him above Chuba Hubbard, but I think at the top of this tier, I would expect a decent work share for Tyjae Spears. Last week, he scored 2 touchdowns. He probably would get back in the end zone this week. So Tyjae would be a very solid pivot as well. But assuming that Tony Pollard is active, I'm still going to rank him. But he moves down 8 spots. Given he didn't practice at all, and last week definitely favored Tyjae. Pollard also fumbled. I have a few concerns with Tony Pollard. So at number 33, moving down 8 spots, I would probably just bench him. I think I would have rather gone Jalen Warren or Isaiah Pacheco, and Warren was fine, but Pacheco was bad. I think the risk level with Pollard is in the same vein, even higher, given he didn't practice at all. So he could get re-injured. He might not finish the game. I think Pollard needs to be benched, and assuming he's active, I think Spears is the play at RB26. I'd rather go Patrick Taylor unless Pollard is ruled out entirely. If Pollard does not play, Tyjae Spears moves up to number 22. I've already bumped him up 10 spots, and that would be a total of 14. Tyjae would be a great flex option this week without Tony Pollard. Outside the top 35, there's really not that many changes except for Tyrone Tracy. I'm less interested in Tyrone Tracy. I think you have to bench him because of the injury status. He's not practicing very much this week. So I would rather go Devin Singletary. The last 2 games, Singletary has played better. And if one player is going to find the end zone, I would probably rather bet on Singletary. So I don't want to start either. Unless Tyrone Tracy is ruled out completely, then I still would not trust Singletary. But if you did tell me that happened, if Tracy's not active, then just like Tyjae Spears, you'd have to upgrade Devin Singletary. I think Singletary would move up to the range of like Ramondre Stevenson, probably 1 spot above Amir Abdullah. I think Devin Singletary would be right behind Tyjae Spears at running back 27, right above Amir Abdullah. So a much more legit flex play. If Tracy's active, though, I'm not going to start either of them. I'm not that tempted by the Giants' backfield if it's a split rotation. If there's only one guy, then yeah, give me Singletary as a decent flex play. But if both of them are healthy enough to suit up, no thank you with the Jets running backs. But I was too low on Gus Edwards. He had 2 touchdowns and a good game. My bad, but definitely a risky play historically. And then beyond him, I think outside the top 38, you should be benching these players. But if you are that desperate, maybe a touchdown does indeed go in favor of Roschon Johnson versus the Lions. He usually gets more goal line attempts than DeAndre Swift. So Roschon at RB39, that's the only way it works out. Maybe you'll take a chance on it, just like Gus Edwards, hyper touchdown dependent of a player. But then Alexander Madison moved up 15 spots. I previously did not rank him, and because I kind of considered Sincere McCormick a potential start. But I still prefer Amir Abdullah. Abdullah had more snaps last week, and Madison still scares me. I don't trust Madison. I'd rather take a desperate swing on Abdullah instead. But then Tank Bigsby, I think, should move up 2 spots at 41. Maybe he does have a role. And then Craig Reynolds probably has a role as well. Maybe Reynolds finds the end zone, but without it, you will get burned. I wouldn't start him, but maybe in DFS, take a swing. And then with Walker fully healthy, I'm downgrading Zach Charbonnet 9 spots. I am not going to start Charbonnet against the Vikings. Really tough matchup. In the rain, maybe he gets some volume, but still, I don't think it's efficient touches, and I'm definitely benching Charbonnet. Now that Walker's active, I would only start Walker, not Zach Charbonnet. And then outside the top 48, I did lower Antonio Gibson and Cam Akers. I think I just had him a bit too high in the rankings. Closer to 41, then 50. And then that's it at running back. Let's pivot to wide receiver, where the top 18, I'm not changing at all. In the top two tiers, the players I told you are must starts. I am not moving any single thing. Not a single player changes, in my opinion, going into Sunday. However, outside the top 18, that is where things do change. And I did downgrade Jerry Jeudy 4 spots because I really don't trust Dorian Thompson-Robinson at all. We've never seen him throw it at a high rate. All of Jeudy's production has come with Jameis Winston, and it's just not the same situation. So Jeudy could be a massive bust this week. I have him at number 23 because the ceiling is still open. It's not like the Bengals defense is good, but I just can't tell you with confidence that he's a top 20 play. There is plenty of risk with him, and a lot of things are unknown. So with the quarterback change, I have him in the same range as a guy like Drake London, but I think I also kind of underrated London just a little bit. With no Deonte Banks for the Giants, I also think London is a much safer play with Penix, who played well in college. I have no idea how many pass attempts he'll actually have this week, but London and Jeudy do rank top 25. I think they are better plays than Khalil Shakir. They probably have a higher ceiling and comparable floor to Khalil Shakir. So those are the two biggest changes, I think, in this tier. Jeudy moving down 4 spots and London moving up 5. But because Jeudy moves down, we do bump up Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp 1 spot. I also took out George Pickens, who did not play on Saturday, so that's why Malik Neighbors and Jacoby Myers move up 2 spots. I would rather go with Neighbors and Myers than Jeudy or London, but London still a viable top 24 receiver. In a 12-team league, I do think you have to be starting Drake London this week. Let's hope Penix favors him the most. But the only other change in this tier is, I think, a big upgrade to Jalen McMillan. He moves up 9 spots with the injury to Cade Otton. I do trust McMillan a lot. I expect close to like 8+ targets, and everything can't just go strictly to Mike Evans. So last week, McMillan paid off. I love Baker this week. I think McMillan in prime time will have a good game. I do not fear the Cowboys defense at all. So it's a top 10 matchup for him. I think McMillan is a very good play. Top 30 this week, I think he will find the end zone. I like McMillan a lot, even more than Jamison Williams. So a must start, in my opinion, a very good flex candidate at wide receiver 27. If you have to look to the waiver wire this week, try to get Jalen McMillan off the wire. Beyond the top 28, we do drop down a tier, and I did remove Jalen Waddle previously in this tier himself. Now he's doubtful, and I really can't imagine he suits up. So no way you're starting Waddle. I removed him from the ranks entirely, and I also downgraded Adam Thielen, given the injury status to David Moore improving. David Moore did not play last week, and we saw Coker have the good game. There's a chance it pivots to any of those guys. So I think Thielen is in a tier below. I have him now back-to-back with Jalen Coker, and Thielen moves down a total 5 spots overall. I just can't say for sure that he's the same option I thought he was a few days ago. So a slight downgrade to Thielen. I would not be starting David Moore, but in the flex territory, Thielen and Coker do have some slight appeal. They have a high ceiling if the touchdown hits. But then with some other players getting taken out, like Cedric Tillman, as well as Waddle, we do see some players moving up, mostly just like 2 spots. I don't really change my opinion that much on most of these players. However, I did upgrade Malik Washington 18 spots overall. I think he's a much safer play in the same range as a guy like Josh Downs. Out of the slot, I do expect a lot of targets from Malik Washington. I think he really needs to step up, and not everything can go to Jonnu, Tyreek, and A-Chain. Against the 49ers, Tua will have to step up, and at home, I do think Malik Washington has very sneaky upside. He could score a touchdown and really pay off. I think in daily fantasy, he's a great option, but obviously some risk. We don't know exactly what he'll do, and just like Josh Downs out of the slot, maybe he's kind of capped given the situation he's in. But I would rather be starting him as well as Ridley, Michael Pittman, and Josh Downs, who have no weather to worry about, than any of the Packers receivers. I've upgraded all of them above all three Green Bay wideouts. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, I think are the only ones I'd really consider with some touchdown upside, but Christian Watson right behind them. He hasn't scored touchdowns, but he's actually been more reliable from a yard standpoint. So I'd bench all of them in the snow. I don't see much value for Jordan Love, and that means little value at all for the receivers, especially with Luke Musgrave potentially returning. That's just another mouth to feed. So no thanks with them. I'd rather go with the Titans or Colts receivers along with Malik Washington in Miami. Beyond the top 50, I did downgrade Marquez Valdez-Scantling 2 spots. I think given his injury status, even if he plays on Monday, it's way too risky in the snow in Green Bay. No thank you with MVS. I would be benching him no matter what. I am not going to bet on MVS this week. But lastly, with some players getting taken out, entering the top 50 are Calvin Austin, Demira Douglas, and Elijah Moore. Maybe I was too low on Calvin Austin in hindsight. Beyond wide receiver, though, at quarterback, I am not changing a thing with the exception of Aiden O'Connell. I was wrong to rank Desmond Ridder at 31, but I'm not starting AOC. I have him at 31, right where I ranked Desmond Ridder. No thank you with Aiden O'Connell. At tight end, I did bump up David Njoku 30 spots, previously unranked. I didn't think he would play, and it does look like he at least has a chance on Sunday. So if he's active, he's gotten way too many targets, and we have seen him see similar volume with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I do expect a lot of checkdowns for Njoku if he plays. So I would start him at tight end number 6. I think if active, Njoku is one of those players who just gets way too many targets to bench. At that position, that's the name of the game. Njoku has one of the safer floors at tight end if healthy. So monitor his status. If he's available, I would start him. But if not, you'll get a bagel. Make sure before the game kicks off. But that's why everybody else moves down 1 spot behind him, with the exception of Tucker Kraft, who I'm bumping down 4 spots total. I am really concerned about Kraft, especially if Musgrave will play. I was already worried about the snow. Now the snap share will go down if Musgrave is active. He is actually like the number 1 guy on the depth chart to enter the season. So Musgrave might be even more involved than Kraft. Kraft's value could absolutely plummet. I'd be trying to bench Kraft in the snow this week, hyper touchdown dependent, and I'm not convinced it happens anymore if Musgrave can play. So he moves down to the bottom of that tier, but could find the end zone, always a possibility. And then Hayden Hurst, Cole Kmet, Kyle Pitts also moved down 1 spot with Njoku jumping them. I did remove Cade Otton, though, previously at tight end 20. So those are the only changes at tight end. Lastly, at defense, you guys did complain about the Bengals ranking, and yeah, I could see a slight path for success against DTR, but they suck. They're so porous on defense. I only bumped him up 4 spots to defense 22. I still would not be starting the Bengals, but maybe they're not worse than the Bears, Lions, Saints, or Giants. At 22, they're still not a defense I personally would consider. So those are all the updates in my rankings. These are the top 20 at quarterback, tight end, and defense here on the screen. I'll leave it up for another 5 or so seconds. If you need it longer, you can pause it and hang on to it. But now let's show you the flex rankings, the top 40 at running back and wide receiver. And I think you have to start the top 21 running backs all the way through Chuba Hubbard. I think they all have to be in your lineup. I wish I ranked Derrick Henry higher, but I think above that green line, everyone deserved to be in your lineup. However, Kendry Miller starts the flex range, and I think starting with him all the way through Jalen Warren, you have a very legitimate question to be asking. But I think the only receivers I think are in the comparable tier would be Devontae Smith at 29 all the way through Michael Pittman at number 40. I think those are the toss-ups at flex. Otherwise, I'm definitely starting the top 28 receivers above any running back outside the top 21. And I think all the guys above the green line should be in your lineup this week. The top 49 players at flex, I think, deserve to be started in my view. So that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. If you still have any questions, let me know in the comment section. But that's it for the video. Good luck this week. My name is Adam Riancho. I hope you win, and thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.